Welcome back to another episode of Savor, Food, and Body. So Chef Shannon is back again today. We're going to talk a little bit more about what do you do if you have extra produce left over from the fabulous farmers market that you went to, and or what if you're just a 1 or 2 person household now? Kids are gone, you're in midlife, you're doing your thing. You don't want to spend a bunch of time in the kitchen, but you also don't want food to go to waste. So how can you do that? So Chef Shannon's going to walk us through how do you preserve produce? How do you maybe buy in bulk so you always have foods on hand, like pantry items, but how do you put those away in a way that's going to make sure that they don't go bad and you have them easy accessible, and most importantly, you remember what the hell you bought them for and what you're going to use them for, which I don't know about you guys, but I can definitely escape my mind of why did I buy this? What recipe was I going to use it for? So we're going to get into all of that today. So Chef Shannon, thanks for being back today. It's always great to see you.
Thank you. Thank you.
A side note too, really quick, before we get going.
Yeah.
So folks that are listening to our audio on your favorite podcast player, you might also consider going over and watching this episode over on the Savor, Food, and Body YouTube channel, because Shannon is going to have some visuals for us. We'll do the best we can to describe them as well for folks that are listening to the show. But if you have a moment and you want to go see what she's actually talking about, then head over to Savor, Food, and Body YouTube channel. I believe it's also listed as Amanda Bullitt RD on YouTube, so you can get the full visual effects. And we'll put the links to both the audio and the visual on YouTube back and forth in each other's show notes. So, all right, Shannon, what do you got for us today?
So last week we talked about going up to the market and just how excited I get. It was like my happy place. But I also have a tendency to, and I know a lot of women my age are the same, especially if you are the main meal maker in your house and you've always made meals for larger people. For me, I feel like, I don't know, my husband's, he's only one person, but I feel like, I shove so much at him, eat it all. And I'm like, it's bursting from the seams and I'm trying to give food away. I still cook like I'm a caterer. And so I really have to dial it back. I still cook like sometimes like I'm in a restaurant, and it's hard not to get excited by all the beautiful, all the beautiful produce that's at the market anyway. And grocery shopping, I really have to, think about, okay, well, there's only 2 of us now, and who's going to eat all this food? I mean, who is going to eat all this food? But sometimes it can't be helped. And so today I think we'll talk a little bit about, we have extra, what do we do with the extra? But for me, when I'm kind of creating meals for the week, or I'm getting ideas from it or inspiration from it at the market, I carry a little notebook with me and I write it down like, okay, I purchased this, and this, and I'm going to come up with some ideas around it from what I already have in the refrigerator and what I'm getting inspired with at the market. It could be kind of overwhelming, right? Especially when everything is beautiful and vibrant and you want it all. I want it all.
Yes.
I want all these gifts for, myself. And again, there's only 2 of us. So a couple of things that I do, and we can get into it a little bit more, but I come up with some ideas. Cooking with what's in season is obviously going to be delicious, but what do I already have at home, and having that in mind when I go to the market. My sister talks about never going to the market hungry. I'm always hungry. I am always hungry. So, I mean, I will never miss a meal. I don't understand that concept. So, I keep in mind of what I already have in the refrigerator and taking a good inventory. I think that's the key to good shopping and good marketing in general is taking an inventory. And you've done this working in the food business industry yourself, just how important that is. So writing an inventory, what do we have already in the fridge? And, only to, like, if you don't write it down or you don't remember it, or it's not in the back of your mind, we have a tendency to purchase the same things over and over and over again.
Do you work, when you say, so working off of an inventory, are you thinking the same things as like a PARS list? Again, that's an industry term.
So yes. So what the example of par, what a par is that, say I worked in an Italian restaurant, the meals that I create have a tendency to more Mediterranean or Greek, or but these are the things I feel really comfortable in using. So a par list would be the things that you have on hand to be able to create the food that you need to create. Olive oil, salt, maybe it's canned tomatoes, maybe it's fresh herbs. Do I have the proteins that I need for the week? If you're eating meat, maybe it's, I have a chicken, I have some ground turkey, or I have tofu or tempeh. These are my par lists of the things that I create in my house that I need on hand. So a par list, making sure that these are always stocked up and that you know how much of each thing that you have. So, doing a visual or just a quick, walkthrough of your refrigerator and your pantry and your dry goods before you go shopping, just to keep it in your brain. And if you're like me, where the things that are in my brain sometimes go out my ears, that you write it down of what you have on hand. So yes, par list, exactly. And then, an inventory of, okay, well, I do have olive oil, but I only have a quarter cup. So I need to write it down somewhere. Then I'm going to need to order it later on in the week, or, if I pick it up now. But if you pick it up, do you have room to put it away in an appropriate way? So yes, having that inventory so you don't end up with 12,000 different condiments in your refrigerator. I'll never not do that. I think, how many different chili crisps do I really need? But it's
And I'm one of those people that like, no, I want to see what I got in my fridge. I don't want anything buried. I need to be able to see everything I got. Because if I don't see it, I'm not going to use it. And then that's another way that I end up, well, let's be honest, it doesn't rarely happen. But if you can't see it, you're not likely to use it, and then it might go bad if it's a perishable item. So
totally.
I always need to see it.
I always need to see it as well. So this is one of the reasons why I decant and that I label things, just because I'm a visual person. I don't want to have to dig if it's not put away, or if it's in its original packaging, or if it's in something that you can't see through. You don't know how much you have. So one of the things that also in industry as a chef, and what I tell students is to make sure that you're putting things in clear containers. So it's an easy visual. So when you're doing a quick, breeze through of what's in your refrigerator, if it's in metal or if it's in like a ceramic that's not see-through, you're not going to know what you have in there unless you're taking lids off or things like that. And who has time for that, right? Nobody. So making sure that, you can see through it, and that it's stacked in an organized way, and that it's labeled in some form or fashion, at least that you can understand, and dated, which is also really important. Obviously, you don't have to decant your milk, but you do have a nose. You should smell it before you take off to the market. I mean, things like that.
Yeah, one of the things that I've worked with clients on, particularly on getting in adequate protein, and people will often ask me, like, just give me the list. Like, what are the foods I'm supposed to eat? Just give me the list. Like, okay, well, there's main and there's supporting characters of protein, and main characters of protein have more grams of protein per serving. And supporting characters have less grams of protein, but they have some complex carbohydrates in them. They have some fiber. They have some healthy fats in them. So they're also beneficial foods. So if you just take those two lists of foods and you put them together, that becomes part of that inventory. So do you have in your pantry, your fridge, your freezer, which I think we talked about a little bit before too, do you have some meat, chicken, eggs, fish, tofu, edamame, tempeh, hemp seeds? Those are all of our main characters of protein. Choose the ones you like and that work for your household, and make sure you always have those on hand in some way, shape, or form. That becomes part of that inventory list. The supporting characters are whole grains, beans and legumes, nuts and seeds, some sort of what I call sturdy dairy. So it's your Greek yogurt, it's your cottage cheese, it's your hard cheese. If you and dairy are friends, make sure those are part of that list too. And so that's your inventory, that's your pars. So you always have those main key or capsule ingredients on hand that you can throw together quickly for recipes, even if you're just cooking for one or two people. Because sometimes if you're only cooking for one or two people, you might just need one can of beans and a couple cups of rice. But if you got them on hand, then that makes for quick cooking.
Right. Oh, absolutely. The other thing that I do is that if I'm getting low on something, like you said, Greek yogurt, I go through a lot of Greek yogurt. I use it in, it's daily item that I consume. And when I start getting low on it, I can say to myself, oh, well, remember to get Greek yogurt. But out the ears. So I have to write it down, and I have to write it down in something that I will see. So I have I have a little chalkboard. I also have a dry erase board. I also have like Post-it notes. I'm the queen of the Post-it note, and so are you. So yeah. And it's just an easy way. I put it by the door. I put it on my keys. I'll put it on the back of my phone. That these are the things that I need to pick up. If you say it in like there's 3 different places, you're bound to remember it, kind of, maybe. But I definitely have a running list of the things that I'm running low on, so I can remember it when I go to the market. So because I'm again, I get excited when I go to the market, and I'm easily distracted. I'm easily distractible in general. I have this like ADHD brain, like, oh, squirrel thing. Oh, strawberries, right? So
bread, strawberries, cheese,
strawberries,
cherries.
and I come home and I'm like, damn it. So I forgot the yogurt. So for me, I have to be able to write it down. A couple of ways that I do that is, on my refrigerator, I have a stack of pens. This is kind of cute. I think I saw it on like some Pinterest or something somewhere like a billion years ago. But I took a can of seasoning, and this one happens to be Old Bay seasoning, right? And I put a bunch of magnets on the back. And so this sticks to my refrigerator. So I have a Sharpie, I have pens, I have chalk pens, I have, and there's Post-its in there as well. So it's always right there.
And for those of you, I know I've showed a picture of this on Alpine Nutrition Instagram before, when I did some work in Shannon's kitchen at her house as we're working on this side project, this culinary nutrition course, which will be out next fall. And I took a video of her kitchen, and it's so well organized. It's artistic, but it's so well organized because she's got these formulas down of like, I use this pen to write down what I need here, to write down on the jar, this is what this is used for. And that's one of the things that we wanted to share with you today too, is like, how do you do that? How do you create organization in your kitchen so that you can easily cook for 1 or 2 people and not have ingredients go bad?
Yes. Yeah. I thank you. It is definitely the place that I spend the most time, besides sleeping, but probably more so in my kitchen. So for example, whether this happens to be texturized vegetable protein. I've never played very much with it, so I don't really know the cooking instructions behind it. I know that you rehydrate it and things like that. I picked it up, it was on a recipe that I was looking at. So I cut out the instructions with, just a pair of scissors, and I just put it on the lid. So that way the date's on here, and I also know what the hell it is, because otherwise it might be cereal. It may be dog treats. I got to tell you a story. So we have the new puppy, right? And so she has, doggy treats for training, and Trader Joe's has these like little liver biscuits. Our trainer said, well, you can use animal cookies, or you can use these little liver biscuits that are only a couple bucks. I'm like, sweet. My husband is a snacker. I mean, and so he makes a beeline to the kitchen, and I decant things. So I decanted the liver treats. I had decanted the animal crackers too. Regardless of whether it was labeled or not, he knew from visual that there were cookies in the jar. So he took a handful of these, what he thought were cookies, nom and nom. And it was a handful of these liver treats from Trader Joe's that looked like little round cookies. God, it was priceless. And I love that. I love that for him.
And how many the whole handful? He made it through the whole handful.
Yes. We have talked about like, let's slow down our eating and really be mindful about, chewing and thoughtful eating and what we're putting in our mouth. That was not this day. So
oh, it is now. If there's one way to teach mindful eating, that would be it.
Exactly. And for us and many, people that are really into food, and he was into food, one of the things that we do is we open things up and we smell it first, right? Does this smell good? Does it smell fresh? Does it smell, delicious? No, it was just straight. Anyway, so labeling things.
Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't.
I mean, lesson learned, right? So a couple of the other things that I do, and this is also kind of a little bit of a restaurant hack, is when I have extra food. Like say I make a batch of beans and I do make too many, or I overproduced, I dumped too many in the pot and it made more than I actually, or my eyes were bigger than my stomach, and I just made too much of something. I want to freeze it. So I chill things down appropriately, like putting it into a shallow container and cooling it down to the appropriate level so we don't give ourselves food poisoning, and then packaging it up and spreading it flat and laying it into these plastic bags. So this way you can label it on the outside with your pen of what the product is, and then you can layer it up. Right. So it's dated, it's labeled, and it's saving room in your freezer or even your refrigerator. So you can pull it and slack it out. And slacking means defrosting. So defrosting it appropriately. And that way you don't have all these like containers in your freezer.
I'm guilty of the containers.
Yeah, Kirby is too. And we talk about spatial reasoning quite a bit. So,
I use Firefly Kitchen jars. Our friend Julie at Firefly Kitchen. So those, and actually they freeze pretty well. But a 16-ounce jar is going to take up more height anyway than putting in a quart size bag or whatever of a freezer bag.
Gallon size bag.
Gallon size. Yeah, putting in two to three servings in a gallon size bag. Yeah.
For sure. And I love reusing her jars as well, but I use them for dry goods. And I also use them for things like lotions and potions. So I have more things I need more jars. But my friend Mary, Mary, we have this thing like where you see a really good jar. That's a really good jar. That's a really good lid. And then
Same. I've been cut off from jars and pottery. And this is why we are all friends.
We have one life, you need it. Sometimes there's good jars. You never know, right? If it's something that I'm going to prepare ahead of time, I also have bowl covers for things that, these are, I don't know, they look like Granny's bonnet, but you made a salad, you want to you do things ahead of time. So you made some quinoa and you're going to eat it for dinner that night. Just throwing it over the bowl instead of decanting and creating more dishes is kind of, especially if you're going to use it right away. I know plastic is a big hot button right now, and microplastics and things. However, it is kind of hard to get away from using plastic 100%. So one of the things that I do is that plastic bag that I just showed you that had this, this lentil stew in, I will wash it out and reuse the bags. And I have this thing, and I think I got it on Amazon. It wasn't very, very much, but it dries the bags. It's glamorous. And drying these bags and then just being able to reuse them, so whether I've made some fresh bread and I slice it and throw the slices in the freezer and pull them out to, throw in the toaster, or, I'm reusing it for vegetables, maybe not necessarily freezing because maybe there might be little holes or something in it, but still, being able to get more than one use, whether that's, the sauerkraut jar or it's a plastic bag that you're able to really kind of be a little lighter on our planet, sustainably.
Well, and when folks are concerned about, consuming the microplastics, if you're going to be doing that reuse situation, then you can buy, I'm forgetting the brands off the top of the head, but some of those like silicone type snack saver type packages. Or I was even noticing recent shopping at REI that you can get sturdy plastic bags that are BPA free and that are free a lot of those common concerns of ingredients in plastic, if you will. And so they're not cheap. They're not like going and buying a whole case of your Ziploc bags at Costco or whatever. But if you're going to be doing the reusing and washing them out and drying them on the dryer rack, then it's okay. And they're probably less likely to break down too. But also cooling off that hot food before you put it in the freezer bags, because that's also my understanding is that when it's hot food and hot temperatures that are going to break down the plastic even more. So there are ways to try to work around it. It's not going to be perfect, but this is also why we have livers and we have kidneys and we take care of those so that they can help us, process any of those microplastics that we do come in contact with. But we can also work with our body and not overload it with those plastics when we can, and not overload the planet too.
Yes, there's compostable ones as well. Just
Hmm.
I found like using the compostable ones for fresh produce is better than ones that I'm going to throw into the freezer. So one of the
Same.
ways that you can also cool things down, if not putting it in a shallow container, is using ice as well. So if you're using soup or doing soup or things like that, adding in a few ice cubes is part of the ingredient. So maybe putting a little less water into it as you're making the soup if you're going to use it for later or for making stock, which I do quite a bit. This is frozen, but in the part of the cooling down process, I'll use ice cubes to get it down to the level of cooling it and then leaving enough headroom so it doesn't expand and explode in your fridge. Drying things. I have drying like for herbs. I grow a lot of herbs. I buy a lot of herbs. I get excited by herbs, whether it's, fresh dill or, parsley or, whatever it is, cilantro. If I'm not using it all right away, if I'm not making it into like an herb pesto or a chimichurri, something bright, and we can put a recipe in there for that. But I'll laying on my drying rack and I'll dry them and then I can grind them up and put them into, a little container. So, and labeling them. And that way I have, fresh dried herbs that are wonderful in seasons when they're not as inexpensive and available as they are right now in this time of year. So inventory, decanting, freezing, but also thinking about the recipes that you get excited about. So recipes, if I just gave you a recipe for a chimichurri, maybe that recipe says serves 4 or serves 10 or, whatever the case may be. And I don't want to make that much, nor do I have, room for it. And I may not want to be able to, I want to use it right away. There's a lot of different ways that we're able to take that recipe and to use a little bit of kitchen math and, whether it's using a scale, the calculator on your phone, or there's a couple of free websites or apps that are great. My kitchen calculator, which will take your ingredients or take the recipe if you copy and paste it, if you found it on the internet, and to be able to calculate it for you, a conversion calculator, or a cook's converter. Those are just a few of the things that really inexpensive, if not free, to use to be able to take the recipe. Again, if you're just cooking for 1 or 2 now and it's empty nest and there's no way that we're going to eat that much of this fresh herb pesto or chimichurri, that you're able to divide down the recipe and make some smarter choices when purchasing. I only need 1 bunch instead of 12 bunches because I was excited and it was green and it smelled good. Oh, wait, that's me.
Yeah, that's
So,
perfect. And you could be doing that with any recipe, right? Like the stew that you mentioned, or
yeah,
a casserole or anything like that. Yeah.
I'm fortunate that I'm not like this, but, with my husband, he'll take a container and eat the stew every single day of the week at work. He's like, I'll eat it. Oh, all that bread that you made because you were excited, I'll eat it. Does he need to? I don't know. But for me, I had it once that night. I may not want to look at it again for another couple. So how we store things or be able to scale them down to a more of an appropriate level that isn't feeding 25 people.
Well, you're bringing up a good point too that just aligns with intuitive eating in general. And I run into this question all the time from folks. They're like, well, yeah, but the meal planning or the prepping on the weekend, but what happens if I get to Wednesday and I don't want the leftovers because I'm kind of over it?
Yeah.
And is that not intuitive eating? Should I be still forcing myself to have that because I'm afraid of it going bad? But that's not what sounds satisfying to me. So how do we navigate that? And this is another great example. Well, you either start from the beginning and pare down the recipe so you don't have as much. You have just the amount to maybe feed you and your 1 or 2 person household for maybe a
Yep.
day or two. And then if like, well, I usually get tired of it after a day or two and I don't prefer to freeze it, or I'm going to freeze it, but then I'm still only going to have 2 servings again when I thaw it out, and that's fine. And that helps reduce that overwhelm of I made all this food and it doesn't sound satisfying to me anymore. So what do I do with it? Because a number of
Yep.
folks are super conscious about food waste as well. And this is learning these tricks that you've shared today is a good way to work around that food waste, hopefully eliminate the food waste, but then also helping you continue to work with your practice of intuitive eating and not feel like you have to override your intuition or your lead with satisfaction skill that you're developing because you're afraid of food going bad.
Right. I think the one thing that I love, and I think everybody should put on their resume after they are taking some of these tips, is that you can now put down that you know how to do waste utilization. And waste utilization means that you're able to take some of this. So whether it's this lentil stew, or maybe it's a bunch of extra greens that you had that are starting to get a little funky, aka Trader Joe's, and those bags that we again. So as waste utilization, maybe I might take this lentil stew and add it as part of a filling for a breakfast burrito, or the greens that are starting to get a little, maybe I'll steam those and fold those into, a soup or some scrambled eggs, or, there's all sorts of different ways that you can take a look and reimagine with a little creativity ways that you can utilize some of the leftovers that you already do have in your fridge. Maybe it's not enough to put in the freezer. Maybe that's like being a little excessive, but you don't want to give it to the dog. How can I use it? So can I add it into a salad? Can I mash it up and add a little bit of olive oil and spread it on top of some crusty bread? There's all sorts of different ways to be able to take a look at it. And that's the fun of being, a cook in the kitchen, right? Is like, how can I paint all sorts of different pictures with this one ingredient? And it's, something to think about, like, oh, well, that really worked. I'm going to write this down. This worked last time I had these leftovers and everybody seemed to like it. Maybe it's my shtick, So.
Well, and I wonder in that container that you had, that you showed us, the magnetic container on your fridge,
Yep.
depending on the size of container that someone chooses to use for that, putting in a little notebook, a little flip notebook or whatever in there, to then someone can just make notes. Yeah, exactly. Little 4x6 notebook or something that just stays in there. And then you can make those notes of like, this was really tasty. This wasn't great. For satisfaction next time, I think I would do this and this, or it was perfect and can't wait to make it again next time.
Isn't that the fun?
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's the fun. Yeah.
Well, and that's really what we're trying to do, Hope, and hopefully you guys are hearing this too, is it's okay to play in the kitchen. It's okay to play in the kitchen, and you can do it in a way where you're not going to lose a bunch of these delicious ingredients that you've spent money on, and two, they've got lots of beautiful flavor to them. And if you're just starting to learn how to use some of these ingredients, maybe you haven't been a home cook for very long, or now you have time, now that the picky kids are out of the house and you get to eat the way you want to eat, you get to practice that lead with satisfaction a little bit more. Maybe you're exploring with more ingredients. And for some people that can be kind of intimidating and overwhelming, like, but what if I do it wrong? Well, if you do it wrong, you can compost it, especially if you're in the Seattle area, but the learning itself is way more valuable than that, and it's okay.
Yeah.
So, and to that point too, again, as I mentioned at the top of the show, Shannon and I are going to have a gentle nutrition culinary course coming out next fall. There'll be a link below wherever you're watching this that you can get on the wait list for that, so you'll hear when it drops, and we'd love to have you in the course there. So if you want to learn more of these tips and tricks, and how do you do intuitive eating literally in the kitchen, how do you feed yourself with it, that's what we're talking about here too. We're also going to do another future episode to kind of talk about oils, and there's a lot of noise about oils going on right now, and seed oils in particular. So we're going to bust some myths about that, not only from the nutrition standpoint, but from the culinary standpoint too. Definitely. So I hope you all subscribe to the show so you can hear when that show drops as well. Thanks so much, Shannon. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
So fun.
Thank you, Amanda.